And on behalf and on behalf of the county, I want to thank all of you for joining us tonight for what's the title again? This is So You Want to Write Books for Kids, presented as part of the Our Stories Ourselves series of conversations in partnership with More Than a Single Story, and funded by the by money from the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund. This is just one of many programs presented by Hennepin County Library. Thanks to your support and your participation. I will encourage you to look at our website for other online and in-person events coming up from in partnership with the Loft Literary Center and Springboard for the Arts and a number of other collaborators. Tonight we will get started. We'll start tonight's program by introducing you to Carolyn Holbrook. Carolyn is a writer, educator, and an advocate for the healing power of the arts. She is the founder and director of More Than a Single Story, which is a Twin Cities-based conversation series, and a valued partner of Hennepin County Library. She was also recently named the McKnight Foundation's 2025 Distinguished Artist for her significant contributions to Minnesota cultural life. Thank you for being with us, Carolyn.
Thank you, Jason. And thank everyone for being here tonight, for joining us for tonight's panel conversation. So you want to write books for kids. So yeah, More Than a Single Story is excited to be partnering with the Minnesota BIPOC KidLit Creators on this panel, along with our longtime partner, Hennepin County Library. So just a little bit about More Than a Single Story. We are a Twin Cities-based organization whose mission is to position the literary arts as a catalyst for cross-cultural healing and social justice. We do this through readings, public conversations, writing workshops, and mentorships that foster insight, empathy, and literary skill building. We're going into our 10th year now, and I'm so happy that what began as just a conversation series called Our Stories Ourselves has morphed into a larger organization with greater offerings and more partnerships. Many thanks to Hennepin County Library and especially to Kia Vang, who's been our longtime partner. And thanks also to the voters of Minnesota for funding from Minnesota's Art and Cultural Heritage Fund. Tonight, I also want to offer a special thanks to Sarah Warren and the Minnesota BIPOC KidLits group. I'm just thrilled for the things that we've done together this year. Along with Hennepin County Library and the Humanities Center, we were able to bring in the amazing middle grade and young adult author Jason Reynolds last spring. And now we're doing tonight's panel with 2 writing workshops that were held last week. And I'm very excited about tonight's panel and moderator Sun Young Shin, and along with authors Art Colson, Christine Oxtra, Amiko Rainbow, and Crown Shepherd. So tonight's moderator, Sun Young Shin, designed a conversation with these 4 panelists to help BIPOC children's book creators navigate the path to publication. Topics will include crafting unique and marketable story ideas, writing and revising for young audiences, finding agents and publishers, managing submissions and rejections, building a resilient creative mindset, as well as other topics. And we will have time for Q&A following tonight's conversation. So feel free to post your questions in the chat or to raise your hand if you prefer to voice your questions. We'll also ask you to fill out an evaluation towards the end of the program. So let's welcome Sun Young Shin, who will then introduce the panelists. Sun Young Shin has written more award-winning books than I can count. She is a poet, an editor, a children's book author, and a cultural worker, and she's one of the kindest people I know. She was born in Seoul, Korea, raised in the Chicago area, and now lives in Minneapolis. She's the author of Heart Eater, a memoir of immigration, language, and belonging, forthcoming in May 2026. Her most recent poetry collection is 6 Tones of Water, co-authored with poet, novelist, and visual artist Vicky Now, and she is the editor of the anthologies A Good Time for the Truth, Race in Minnesota, and What We Hunger For, Refugee and Immigrant Stories for Food and Family. She's co-editor of Outsiders Within, writing on transracial adoption. She is a current McKnight Foundation Fellow in Creative Nonfiction and is a recent McDowell Fellow. And she has received artist grants from the Bush Foundation, the Minnesota State Arts Board, and elsewhere. And she also co-directs the community-oriented micro-organization called Poetry Asylum with poet Sue Wang. Sorry for my. So let's turn it over to Sun Young Shin. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Carolyn and Jason, and thanks everyone for being here. It's so exciting. This is such an amazing topic, and I'm glad to be here with community. So thank you, Carolyn, thank you, Jason, and thank you to my panelists. I'm going to invite the panelists to appear on video so I can introduce you, and then we can kick off the conversation. Okay, awesome. So these are short bios. Mine was really long, so these are short. So I'm going to also ask each person when they start answering the first question, they're welcome to tell you more about what they do. Art Colson is a writer of Cherokee, English, and Dutch, and the author of more than 12 books, graphic novels, and plays. Christina Oxtra is a Filipino-American author and has written 16 books for children. Emiko Rainbow is a Japanese Caucasian-American illustrator, muralist, and designer. And last but not least, Crown Shepherd is an author and reading advocate. So everyone, round of applause for our amazing panelists. I'm so glad to share space and time with them. I'm really grateful. And yes, it's always an honor to be in the same space as Carolyn, and so many of us really owe her a lot over the decades of the literary ecosystem and community that she's built. So always appreciating. All right, so to dig in, I have some questions. The first one for this topic is, how do you mine what you want to write about from your own experiences? And anyone can go first.
I guess I'll go first. A lot of it comes from like my experience, my culture, as a Black American, our culture is, screwed through other lenses sometimes. And so like I really want to highlight the beauty because the stereotypical things about our culture are usually highlighted and amplified. And but not like who we really are and the beauty of that. And then my nieces and nephews. I have over 30. I have a lot of siblings, so I have a lot of nieces and nephews. I'm just around a lot of kids. So like I build my stories around what they're already doing, what they're interested in, their childhood, things like that, things that I know are gonna make them funny and or laugh, and things that like uplift them. So a lot of my stories come from, yeah, my community, my culture, my family, like who I am and what grounds me and who I am. Those are the stories I want to tell. So that's where my stories come from.
That's beautiful. Thanks, Crown. Who would like to go next? Art.
Just like I can jump in. Um, I think just as writers, we tend to write the things around us, the things that we're living. And for those of us who are, from communities other than the dominant culture, we tend to write about the people who are around us. And so that's my problem in the community. And I do want to write things that maybe I haven't seen before, or, especially with a kid, I didn't see a lot of just like native people living just over there. Just want to fall back as council. Then they'll fall back on stereotypes that people see all the time about us. I wanted to write the things that I'm getting with my family, things I'm living with my community. And not in the past tense, but even today, but now even today, we have a vibrant future. Those are the kinds of things I look at, the joy of being a native person today.
Thank you.
I originally got started writing because not just to share my stories, but I wanted to help fill the shelves of more diverse stories and especially Filipino American stories. I thought it was kind of sad that I was already in my 40s by the time I saw a book that wherein I actually saw myself, and I was inspired by it and how it made me feel. It made me feel seen. It made me feel like my stories mattered, because that whole time I didn't think any my stories mattered. So why bother writing about it? No one's going to read it. But when I read that book, I realized that there is a need for it. And if I could make a young reader, even just one young reader, feel the way I did, that awesome feeling that I had, then it's worthwhile. The endeavor's well worth it.
Thank you.
I can speak from a visual standpoint since I'm an illustrator. I'm not an author yet. I'm working on my written and illustrated book now. But just kind of like what everyone else said, I take it from my experience. I'm a multiracial gal and I have multiracial kids and a multiracial husband. So just living life, it's very personal, what I bring into the stories. So also I know that I don't know the statistic, the number, but I know when kids see themselves in stories, they are more engaged and they just do better because they see themselves. And, I actually just saw a book the other day it's called You're Asian, and there was a mixed girl on the cover, and it like brought me to tears. I was like, oh my God, like it does matter. It's important. So I try to portray people that look like me, look like my friends, lots of diversity, what the real world looks like. Um, I have tons of friends that are diverse, and even in my art, I can visually pull in my dog and my cat into the story. And I have a Scandinavian, Irish background, and Japanese. And yeah, the book is Nana and Abuela, but then I also brought in like some embroidery from Hispanic cultures to honor the author, and she's from um, Chile. So I looked at some fabrics and I did my research. And yeah, I just pulled in like a lot of the patterning and the dresses and the jewelry. And I just look at everything culturally and I pull it in.
That's great. Thanks, panelists. Okay, our next question is, how do you propose or how do you like to help writers find the courage to tell the stories they really want to tell? Or if you have any stories around that topic that you want to share with this group.
I guess I'll go again first. I I'd like to encourage diverse authors um to write especially children's books. I just tell them, like, I'm in the schools. I see the kids, they want your book. I see their reactions when they see themselves featured in a story, whether it be their skin tone, their disability, their hair color, like any way that they can relate to a character more based on their features rather than like the personality of the character. It changes kids. And so I just encourage authors to do it for that moment when you're with a kid and like they've seen themselves for the first time and it's because of something you created. You created specifically for them. And so I just tell authors that moment, like that moment is everything, because that moment for me was everything. I never thought I was going to be a children's book writer. I wrote my first children's book because of my nephew and a need that he expressed to me. And then seeing other little Black boys have that same reaction he had when he saw himself in the images of the book, it's transformative. Like it like nurtures something deep inside of me. You know what I mean? And I always tell people most writers are readers. And I always just make them think back to when they were reading. Did you have books that looked like you, that characters that represented you, your lifestyle, your culture, the things that you liked, you know, your physical features? And it's always no. And it's like, you have the opportunity to give that now, like give it in a way that you didn't have it. Because if I would have had it as a kid, that would have been my mom would have hated my reading habit a lot more than she did, and she hated it. I was down to like one book a month by the time I was in middle school. Like that was all I was getting outside of library books. And I probably would have negotiated three if they were books that really truly like easily found books. You know what I mean? I had to search for books in those authors, or wait for them to put out new work. And I'm like, now we are in a point and place in the publishing world where it's a lot more easily accessible to become a published author, to the point where we can flood the market. So why aren't we flooding the market? Like we have the capability to flood the market. This generation and more generation, older generation or newer generations of diverse people are standing more in their power outside of supremacy and what, you know, all of that. So in standing in that power, we need to give the next generation what we didn't have. And what we didn't have was diverse literature readily at our hands. Like I could go anywhere and grab it. I could walk into Walmart and grab it. It's hard. It wasn't like that. You know what I mean? And it can be. So why aren't you, you know, contributing to the solution? Every story matters in my mind. You know what I mean? Like somebody can find themselves in every story, in every character. Why not write your story?
And
Thank
I
you.
can jump off of that to build on that. So you want to write it, right? You found, but the thing is, it can be scary. It can be scary to share your own personal experiences. I had difficulties with that at first when I was going through the MFA program, and my advisor said, well, why are you writing all of these stories that you're having difficulties when you have these stories? You just verbally told me, why can't you write it? So because I don't want to. I don't feel like it. You know, there was this fear of digging into my past and writing about it. First, I thought nobody cared. Number two, what am I going to find there? It can be scary, depending on how you grew up and some of the memories you might have. It can be, you know, a little scary. But what I found was that when I finally wrote about my grandfather and how he started losing his memory, I realized that there's this um, a piece of me that was missing, something I didn't deal with for a long time. That obviously it stuck to me because once I sat down and wrote it, it just kind of flowed. And at the end of it, I actually got teary eyed, and that's when I realized, like, oh my gosh, I've been holding this on for so long that I didn't know it was affecting me, and it was kind of empowering, kind of uplifting, almost therapeutic. Writing can be therapeutic. It can be scary, but I think it can also be therapeutic and healing. Once I wrote it, and you know, a few years later when it was published, the first time I read it and read the ending, I actually got teary-eyed, um, because I felt like this weight kind of lifted of now I'm able to share my story, and now I've been able to kind of deal with that, and people are listening to me and giving me support, and it wasn't so bad after all, you know? So yeah, it can be scary. You don't know what you might find. And obviously there's some self-care involved if you're digging through certain difficult times in your life, because all of us, there's always a piece of us. I think every author puts a piece of themselves in their writing, whether they realize it or not sometimes, or they're consciously, subconsciously. So obviously self-care if they're dealing with difficult topics, but also I think you will find that it's very healing, therapeutic, and there's always somebody, at least one person out there who you will touch, whose heart you will touch, and who you will also help heal. And you will be there. Your book and your work would be much needed therapy for them as well.
Thank you.
Well, I hope you can hear me better now. My earbuds are
Better.
okay. Better, thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
What I do to encourage writers is, actually feet on the ground. I'm a teaching artist, and I lead a program at the All My Relations Arts for aspiring native writers, and with an eye toward getting them published. So I coach folks to it's a selective process, and we work with them for 18 months. and at the end we publish an anthology, so they at least have one publishing thing in the field. And work with them individually, and then as a group, I'm talking about craft, I bring in guest writers, I bring in publishers, editors, acquiring editors to talk about the business, because I want to give them the practical skills that, if you go to, and we were just talking about this in our writers group the other night, you go to an MFA program, they teach the craft. They don't teach them the business side, hard side, the things you have to do to be published, things you have to do to be paid, the things you have to do to, keep the lights on and keep implements in. And those are the sorts of things that we find that pass along practically to the writers, so they can see that it's not just about sitting down and writing is the important part, but it's not the only part. And there are other parts that go with it, and so we talk about all of that. So that's one way of encouraging people. I serve as a mentor to a lot of writers, BIPOC writers. And I have mentors who, for myself, who came before me, and I'm just trying to pass along the great things that they did for me and to the next generation.
Thank you.
I just want to say, if you're a writer and you want to put your stories out there and you're scared, everything new is scary, change is scary, but stories have been around before school, before MFAs, fancy MFAs, and BFAs, and all of the things. Stories are survival information, and to survive as a human on this planet is very hard, externally and internally. And once we share our stories out there and put as much stories as we can, as different as we all are, once we see these stories and all the variations and all the cultures and all the backgrounds, we will all see that internally we are the same. We all feel the same: hurt, sad, happy, joy. I think that's really art in general, is just to connect, sure, outwardly, and it's therapeutic. It's a personal thing for us as artists to put it out there, but it's also when people see us do the thing that we love to do, they connect as well.
Thank you. All right, this is a big one. How do each of you, how have you gone about, and how do you go about building and maintaining a sustainable writing practice?
I can jump in on this one, so Crown doesn't have to go first. I actually taught a class at the Loft on this topic, and the advice that I gave to the writers in that class was the key to a sustainable writing practice is to find a practice that works for you. And it can be different every day. There's no right place, there's no right time to write, there's no right word count to have every day. It's what works for you. One of the people that I worked with who's a member of our writers group now, Nicholas Shaw, he has young children with him, and he steals 20 minutes here and 20 minutes there when the kids are napping or the kids are occupied, so he writes on his phones. And he's completed a couple of books that way. It doesn't have to be sitting down for 8 hours at a stretch, at a set time. And so I think the flip side of that is to give yourself grace on those days when you just can't. I try to write every day, but sometimes I can't. Things happen, life happens, or I'm just not feeling it. And so I give myself grace and I pick it up the next day. Don't let yourself go too long without writing, but I give myself enough grace to skip that day every now and then when I need to. But I still try to plod along and get that book out. And my agent keeps me on track too. Keeps reminding me my deadlines and that's when it comes.
Yeah, good. I know one of my answer is always deadlines, but that's not that helpful.
They're helpful.
I mean, if you have them, they're very helpful
Yeah,
because you don't want to
true.
let other people down or because you're going to get paid or not paid or, but when you're kind of writing on speculation before you have a deadline, then it has to be that intrinsic
Yeah.
motivation to finish
True.
something or to get to a certain point in a project. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that's really true, because if you don't like to write, then don't. I mean, don't make yourself write, but I mean, for those of us where it's just something I think we need it. You know, it's not just something we want to do. I like to do. We need it. So we need to tell these stories, and that's what keeps us going. You know, it's
Yeah.
not
Thank
enough.
you. How about the rest of you?
Oh, go ahead, Christina. Do you want to go?
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. I know because I'm in it right now. I'm writing, but I also have two small kids, 7 and 3. One is in school full time, so I have school hours there. And then one is just in pre-K for 2 hours, pretty much. So I know I have that teeny tiny window of peace, which is actually just probably like 30 minutes when I come down to it because I need to do other things in, everyday life. And I just know I have that little block of time. And then when they go to sleep or when, we're watching a movie, sometimes they're taking a bath and I'll just like whip out my laptop really quick and write things down. They're all so many roads to one destination, right? So that's just my personal experience right now. It's wherever I can kind of get it in and yeah, just make it work for you.
I wanted to jump off of, piggyback off of Art's there of not being upset with yourself just because you didn't write today or yesterday. I have a full-time job, I have other commitments, I also teach martial arts, I have a kid, so there's lots of things. My plate is full, cooking dinner, doing chores, all of this. But I try not to be mad at myself if I didn't get to write, today or tomorrow or yesterday. Um, Sometimes you just gotta nourish your creativity, go for a walk or, get some sun out. Maybe that might help clear your mind. I watch all my baking shows. I use that as research. I'm like, oh, I'm just doing some creative research. You never know. I might get inspired. Oh, look, Wednesday's on. Ooh, I might write a horror. You never know. So, but then I come away with all these great stories, or I will go watch a movie and go, wow, that was well written. Maybe I might write something like that. You never know. And, it's just, you have to, creativity needs to be nourished for it to flourish. That's what I always think. You got to feed your soul too. And if you don't feed your soul, it's going to be very difficult for it to help you write. It's starving there. It's starving for attention and rest. It needs rest. So it's okay. And find other sources of inspiration, whether it's nature, whether it's music, whether it's hanging out with friends or watching a movie. Allow yourself that time, and then when you feel refreshed, come back and try it again. I'm pretty sure that when you come back all refreshed, you'll see whatever you're working on in a whole new perspective, and you'll feel much, much better.
Thank you, Crown.
Well, I will say that it's a good thing I went last for this question. Because I have the opposite take. I do want to say, yes, it is about nurturing everything that everyone all said, it is within the time that you have. But for me, I've always wanted to be a writer, and I always had that mentality that, like I have to be in the mood to write, I have to have the inspiration to write. Um, and one of my writing idols, Toni Morrison, I dug deeper into her and what, she was doing and things like that. And there's, a documentary out about her where she's talking about her writing habits, and she's talking about how she would wake up at 5 a.m. to write, and there are other writers who are like that. And so I slowly started to adapt to that type of mentality. But now where I'm at, I treat writing like athletes treat training. You know, you see athletes go 5 days a week, sometimes 7 days a week. They're training, you know what I mean? They're practicing, they're doing weightlifting, they're, you know, shooting hoops, whatever their sport is, they're doing that. And so I look at writing now as I'm training, you know what I mean? Or like going to the gym every day. So I'm somebody, and like writing isn't just sitting down in front of a laptop and writing, or you know, writing paper stuff. I write in many different ways. Writing to me is also reading. So like I read every day as part of my training, or you know, my like that's the way I look at it, is training when I write. Some days I'm writing with purpose, some days I'm writing for self, some days I'm writing for silliness. You know, and like again, like I said, writing for me isn't always just sitting down and like typing on a keyboard or something. I like to switch up my writing. I type on a keyboard sometimes. I like to write when I hand write, because I feel like my creativity flows different when I'm handwriting on a pen and paper. My creativity also flows different when I'm going for a walk and I'm talking into my voice recorder, because my story is alive in my head. So I look at writing now as training. I like to write every day, at least an hour. Some days I'm in it for 3 hours. You know what I mean? But I look at it as, yes, this is something that I want to do. I want to be at that athlete, you know, level of things, and to be at that, you know, Danielle Steele or Stephen King, right, where you're pushing out stories. And that's kind of what I want to do. I have stories. I have so many stories, so many finished stories sitting on my computer. I feel as writers, we do. And I want to be pumping them out. They're pumping into me constantly. I need to pump them out. And so I've found great success in thinking about it like that. No, I don't write every day. Life gets away from me. I fortunately, or maybe unfortunately, depending on how you want to look at it, I don't have kids, so I have more freedom in being my schedule, being able to be like, I can wake up at 7 and write until 9 and then go to work, and things like that. But I do think as writers and as creators, yeah, I think we do need to like get out of that mentality where it's like, I gotta wait for the creativity to come. You know what I mean? I think about other artists. You know, I know painters that paint every day. They can't not paint every day. Not everything is a piece to be sold, but it's like they have this energy that needs to come out. And that's kind of how I think about writing. Like I have to write every day in a creative way. Like I write every day for work, but I have to write for me every day, like at least an hour. And I will stay up late and go and wake up early to achieve that. But I do treat it like training. Like how I would go to the gym or eat healthy, I treat it that same way. Like there's an alarm for it. I'm waking up tomorrow at 9 to write. I already set the alarm for it. So it's gonna wake me up so I can get up and get on the computer for 2 hours. I don't even, this might be TMI, no teeth brush, no nothing. I literally crawl out of bed and sit down at the laptop and look at what I'm writing. So sometimes, you know, just to make sure I get that in.
Mhm. Yeah, something that's has stuck with me ever since 2007. So the Bush Foundation brought in like a leadership kind of coach to do orientation. And one of the things she said was, you are the steward of your talent. And like only you can really manage that. I mean, you are going to have a lot of collaborators, and you're going to have a lot of help, hopefully, and you will help others, but you have to want it more than anyone else. No one can manage that talent, that ineffable spirit part for you as a writer, or as an artist. It was, yeah, all kinds of different artists. And yeah, that's powerful. So I mean, I heard that kind of in all of what you were saying. So thank you, everyone. And all right, next question. So also to the community who's here, these questions were developed collaboratively. So in case you think I'm being mean, like I'm asking mean questions, these good people have consented. So But also, if you're not feeling this question in the moment, like please talk about whatever you're feeling. Yeah, anything you have to say is going to be helpful. So the next question is, what happens after your book is done and out in the world? Anything you'd like to share about that?
Right again.
Yeah, right. The next one.
You keep writing. After it's published, when my debut picture book was published, I started coming up with another idea, or more ideas keep coming. But also, you're likely going to be promoting your book. You're going to have to find ways to promote it, to sell it, to do author visits, to talk about it in panels like this. You're going to probably get invitations to do events. So it's going to be a test of juggling. Of now you're juggling promoting your work while you're working on a new one and trying to get energy for that while trying to get energy to do this. So you're going to probably be doing some juggling and learning how to balance. But again, find time to take care of yourself, take a break from it, come back and attack it again. And I think if you keep writing and you keep creating, I think that will help you in the other realm as well. And I think both can go hand in hand as you continue to grow into the writing journey.
Yeah, thank you. Anyone else want to talk about this? There's a lot. There's a lot. There's a lot before the book comes out. There's as the book's coming out. There's the 6 months to a year after the book comes out. I have a lot to say, but I'm the moderator. I'm being moderate. So
Well, I'll just add to what Christina said. I mean, for me, I just had a book come out. I wrote it 4 years ago. So the first thing I have to do is refresh my memory what was in the book, because I've written 3 books since then. And now I'm touring on the books that that just came out. And so I refresh my memory. And then we do, like Christina said, we do author visits, we do readings, we go into schools, talk to young people about writing, and just do the things that both the publisher asked us to do and the things that we set up ourselves. And depending on the publisher, like the book that just came out is from a bigger publisher, so there's more events that are being scheduled for me. But with smaller publishers, mid-sized publishers, you're often doing that work yourself. So you're reaching out to school districts, or you're reaching out to places where you've spoken before, and setting up visits. And as a writer, that's a good portion of my income is the school visit and the author visit part. So that's you got to keep the cash flow going, because you only get paid when you sell the book. Well, I'm talking about traditional publishers. So when I sell a book, I give an advance, and then make another advance for another year. So I've got what I pay my bills with, between times. And so there's author visits, and there's panels, and there's things like that that you learn. All of it is as part of just being an author. It's the way that you cobble together your living. You get all these different sources of income coming from all this together, and it's up to you to pull them together.
yeah, and if any of you want to talk about, being an author of color, being a Native author, how that's made a difference in your debuts or in how you manage public relations, or, anything like that.
I think while you're doing all of that, building community is also very important, and joining a community that's supportive, just like, here, going out. And I know as writers, we tend to be isolationists. We'd like to sit in front of our computers quietly. We don't, some of us aren't very outgoing. Many of us are not very outgoing, unless we're forced to. So it's a matter of learning to that it's okay to get out of your comfort zone and network, meet friends, just build community, or join a community like what we have here, Minnesota BIPOC, or there's so many other groups out there that support writers and illustrators and creators. Just being with other people and learning from them. Just community alone is number one. You can learn a lot from them, especially those who've been in the industry for a long time. And also just letting you know that you're not alone, because This industry can be very exhausting, frustrating. It's a roller coaster. Sometimes you're frustrated. You're going to go insane when you keep getting rejected. Dealing with different people in the industry, it can be taxing on you. So having that community, building that community while you're promoting your work and your writing will really help you. So, you know, you're not alone. You have other people in the trenches with you that if you need help, you can go to. If you need to go out for coffee with them, you can go to just to vent, or just to get together and just, you know, be together in your journey. You're not alone.
It's great.
Yeah, I'd like to add my approach to after a book is published is a little different. I am more of a hybrid, especially when it comes to my children's books. I'm a hybrid author. I like to have control over the creation of those books because the illustrations are very important to me, and what is displayed within those illustrations are very important to me. And then I also like work in book marketing full time for Wise Ink Media here in Minneapolis. So it's like my day job. So I do all the things that, you know, everyone said. But a big part of like my after the book, if we're talking like marketing and things like that, is I like to partner with corporations and nonprofits to buy my books in bulk to allow me to give away for free. You know, I understand that a lot of my audience or my target audience, you know, of who I write my books for, which are Black children, those are who my characters normally feature, um, don't have accessibility to books or to find those books. And then I also know from working in marketing that parents don't buy books like they used to in the past. So one of the big things that I like to do with my children's books is to partner with nonprofits or corporations so that I can give my books away for free. Like buy my book in bulk and allow me to go into the school and give it away, and I'll get you guys pictures and marketing things. That's something big that I really do. I like to give my books away within the community as much as I possibly can. And so afterwards, that's my main focus. Like, yes, sales. I need to make sales. I need to be out in the community. I do all those things naturally, in a sense. So like the biggest thing I focus on is like how can I partner? Where can I partner? Where can I give within my community where it's needed most? And not you know out not just thinking about Minneapolis as my community, but like as a whole, you know, the whole United States. You know, even in Africa, there's a lot of, you know, programs that send books overseas. You know, I just sent a book of books to Hawaii and things like that. So there's a lot of things. And as an author, I think we get caught up in the after of the book. It's like I have to do the book tour, I have to sell the book, I have to do the author visits and things like that, which are good. Yes, we have to do those things. But I think as authors, we need to think broader about our books, think about them as products. That's what they are. They're products to be sold. And I think about my book as art and a product. And so it allows me to be able to go into these spaces, you know, these nonprofits and big corporations and ask for this funding because I'm like, it's a product. I'm giving it to a community and it makes you look good. You know what I mean? You can brag to your investors and board members and community, like, look what I did. You know what I mean? But I'm actually doing the good work that is in the why for why I write these books. My purpose is to make sure they get in the hands of the kids that need them. So my after is really focused on like I try to give away 1,000 books every time one of my children's books come out. And how can I do that, you know, where I'm not taking too big of a hit? Because it can be a big hit to give away 1,000 books is a lot. So that's just like my 2 cents. And just thinking about your after, think about it in a big broad sense of like how do you get your books out there? And that's my big thing for my children's book. How do I get them in the hands of the kids where people don't have to worry about like paying the listing price on the back and stuff like that? So
Yeah, that's really powerful. I mean, really, I think it depends on your mission, you know, and I think it can be really helpful if you're starting out as a writer or illustrator. not to speak for illustrators because I'm not an illustrator, but I've gotten to work with illustrators, just any, if you're starting any kind of artistic practice that also has an industry to it, and where if you want to professionalize, you are going to have to deal with different business models, right? Is to just think about, get help, come see me at Springboard Artist Career Consultations, get help in figuring out your mission so that you can focus on, right, the end product. Books are commodities. They are bought and sold. They are also, part of our library system for as long as we have it and everything. But yeah, the way that the distribution is just essential. If we don't have distribution, then they will not get into the hands and ears of the kids who need them the most. Yeah, thank you. Amiko, how is this for you? How is it for you with your book?
I guess as a newbie, I thought a lot would land on the publisher, as in like marketing wise. Not so much. Luckily, I have a design background, so I knew how to put together social media flyers, things like that. Have an elevator pitch, really a quick short bio that you can just like rehearse and say off really quickly when you're in a group of people, after you've read a book, at a book event, at a booth, at a school. I have like a short elevator pitch and then I have like a long one, and I save them because you're going to need to copy and paste and send those to each one of your events usually. Get kind of like used to public speaking a little bit. Like hint for me, like a tip that I say is like, it's not about me, it's about the book. And my background is my background. I can easily talk about that because it's my passion. But just talk about the book and how it got there, and don't make it about you so you don't get so nervous, and it kind of comes out easier. And that helps. Yeah, and after the book is out, you get to see like really cool places. We had a book event at the MIA in this beautiful rotunda area, and the Swedish Institute outside in the courtyard. And you usually get like a couple perks, like a free little snack, and also one other thing that come up with maybe an activity. Sometimes we give out coloring pages. The publisher, they had interns that made our coloring pages from my illustrations in the book. I would probably do that myself next time, just so I have more control of the art and what even the coloring pages look like. But they're good. They pass. They look great. So we hand those out. Bookmarks we got from the publisher, but you can make your own. And if someone even has a flyer that they give you for the event, you can make it your own too, in your own brand, in your own style, in your own colorways, and then put it on your social media. So it all kind of you're a brand in yourself, right? As a writer, as an artist, as an illustrator. So take what you can. But yeah, the author of Nana Nobuela, Monica Rojas, she made they make a smoothie in the book. So she did this like kind of puppetry cutouts of making a smoothie, and the kids get to interact. And then I like loosely draw a character from the book on the board, on like a whiteboard, and show them like the shapes that I do. So coming up and being creative, even like it branches out from the book.
Thank you. That was great. So the next question, and then guests and participants, be thinking of your questions. We're going to go into question and answer, in a little bit. I have a couple more questions. But yeah, please think of your questions or questions and comments for our panelists. There's so much wisdom here. So would each of you talk about your pathway to publication, like really tangibly? How did you get your first traditional book deal? And then maybe crown it also, if you're willing to talk about what hybrid publishing is and let people know about that, that would be great. Yeah.
Start. I started out with work for hire freelance writer. I saw someone post on one of the groups I joined online, one of the writing groups, that local publisher was looking for freelance authors and specifically writers of color. So I just threw my hat in. I filled out this form. I said, what have I got to lose? I've been rejected before, so I'm used to this. If they said no, oh well, I shot my shot. And at the time, I was going through the MFA program at Hamline University, and within a few months, I got a message back, and they asked me if I would be interested in writing a nonfiction. Which, to my dismay, I'm like, no, I don't want to do nonfiction. I want to do fiction. But I gave it a try, and I actually ended up liking it. My first two work for hires were nonfiction, and I thought, oh, that's great. I was able to use my journalism background and do research and writing. And from there, it took off one after the other. Once you start producing and proving, hey, I can meet deadlines, I can work, I can write books, and I can even promote this. I know I'm not getting royalties from it, but I'm going to promote the heck out of this and, share it with kids and share it with school, share it with everybody because I like this. Then all of a sudden I started getting more and more. And eventually, I think that taught me a lot of things. That taught me how to work with editors, how to work with, giving my notes on how I want illustrations to be, getting feedback, learning to revise because of the feedback I was given. Nothing scarier than when you think that your middle grade novel is great, and then they said it's too short. We need 2,500 more words. You're like, what? How do I do this? You learn. Adapt and you learn, and all those skills helped me towards getting traditionally published. By the time that I sold it was 2018 when I first got my first work for hire gig, and by 2020 I had sold my debut picture book. By that time I had gained so much knowledge and experience now that when it came time to dealing with an editor and picking illustrators and giving my notes, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm all hat at this now. I'm good. I've got this down. I've developed that thick skin now for feedback. Go ahead, give me feedback. I'm gonna fix this. And I think work for hire is a good outlet. If you are scared of being traditionally published or you're waiting and you keep getting rejected, try work for hire. A lot of people tend to poo-poo it and think they're not real books. Yes, they are real books. They are real. They are your work. You're the one that came out with the characters. You're the one that wrote the plot. You did the work. You edited it. They're real books, and they are in the hands of people in the library, in the schools. So treat it as such. It is a great gateway into learning the industry, making connections, and continuing to develop your craft until you reach whatever goal it is you want to reach. Give it a try.
That's great. Christina, can you briefly explain to everyone what work for hire is and then what those books look like? How would people know what a work for hire book or book series is?
You almost can't even tell from a work for hire traditionally published because they're all mixed together in your school library or public library. Work for hire, they pay you a flat fee to write. For example, hey, we'd like you to write a middle grade story where a girl survives this great catastrophe, natural disaster. We have a whole line of natural disaster books. Would you be interested in writing one of them? Sure. I would like to write about such and such. Would you be interested in that? They said yes. Okay, they'll give you the parameters. This is for this age. This is how many pages it's going to be, and we need the word count. Everything else, up to you. So you do your work, you get a flat fee. There are no royalties for that. So meaning traditionally published, you get royalties eventually. This for work for hire, you just get paid once and that's it. It's not your property. It is the property of the publishers. So if there's some things you want to do about it, sometimes you have to ask permission. Can I share this page for this event, or is it okay? Because you don't want to get in trouble. And it's still a book. You really can't tell looking at something whether it's traditionally published sometimes or work for hire, because the quality nowadays of work for hire is really, really awesome. There is a work for hire publisher, local publisher, Capstone, here in Minnesota. That's amazing. That's who I started working for. And they have awesome people, awesome staff, awesome quality books. You will never know that it was work for hire.
Mhm. Yeah, and thank you. And my understanding too is like for all of the kind of Hollywood IP intellectual property, so Star Wars spin-off books and, just movie spin-off
Yep.
books, all those are work for hire too. And,
Yes.
some of the best novelists are doing that work. Some of the best creative nonfiction writers are also, writers there's always been kind of crossover between the literary publishing world and Hollywood for a certain segment. So that's another kind of work for hire situation.
And
Yeah.
Capstone does IP work as well. I wrote books with DC characters. So the publisher worked with people in DC to get approval. Every time I write something, it goes to Capstone. Capstone sends it to DC. They look at it, they bless it, comes back again. So that's how they do it, to make sure that everybody's all happy. Whoever owns that property, DC owns the Teen Titans, that they get their say and approve it before I continue writing and it goes to print.
Mhm.
And it's another way to learn that industry as well, another facet you can learn.
Thank you. Yeah. Anyone else want to talk about your first entry into publishing, how that happened?
Mine was kind of non-traditional. I was a journalist for many, many years, 25 years, ended my career at St. Paul. And after I left journalism, I was writing I was doing some corporate consulting and so just always writing. And then my friend Marcy Renman called me on the phone one day and said, "Hey, you want to write a book?" And she had been offered a book from the Minnesota Historical Society Press that she didn't want to write. And so he given me my name. And I said, sure. It was about the native roots of the sport of lacrosse. And I'm a lacrosse player and being a native person. And so I talked to the editors there. He had actually picked an idea for a non-fiction book about lacrosse, which I thought sounded really boring. And so I said, "So can I just tell you a story instead that covers all the bases?" And so I wrote the Creators Game, and my friend Robert Desjardins from Red Lake illustrated it. They were going to do historical stories. I said, "Oh no, it's a story you have to do. You have to have a native illustrator." So Robert did the illustration for that. So that was my first book. And I thought it was going to be a one-off. I was never setting out to do a children's author. And 5 years later, Marcy called me again and said, "Oh, you want to write another book?" And Capstone had called her to write a book about Jim Phillips, particularly American Indian athlete. And so I said, "Marcy, I'm not really a sport guy, but I mean, I can Jim Phillips, so I guess I'll do it." And so I read that book, and that book did really well. Scholastic fought for rights to it from Capstones, and it went out in the Scholastic newsletter that goes to all the schools, and it sold a ton of copies. So more the authors started pouring in. So I was really fortunate that, as Christina said, you start with work for hire. A lot of people start with work for hire, and by getting your name out there, more opportunities arise. And 20 books later, here I am. I started the first book. I wrote it in 2012, and it came out in 2014, and the 20th book just came out to the same public. It was kind of a stumbled into the career as a children's writer, and I didn't intend to be a children's writer, but here I am.
Amazing. Thank you.
Yes.
I have mine I think is kind of rare, but I worked with the Minnesota Historical Society Press. They actually reached out to me, the editor did, and I was like, "What? Is this real? Is this a real person?" And they wanted an illustrator for a local author and a local publisher, and I was like, what? How did you find me? Well, about maybe a year prior, I uploaded some artwork to the SCBWI website, and I paid a low cost to be on it for a year or so, and they found me there. They just searched for local illustrator. They just literally looked at anyone who was in Minnesota, and I hadn't had a book even published or illustrated in. I've just worked freelance and product design, and luckily I started making my own art brand, my own personal art during COVID, and it wasn't just client work anymore. Every Friday, I would make personal work, and I would upload it to my portfolio and then to that site and on Instagram. And luckily, they liked my style and my palette, and they saw something in me because I don't think I had any people even illustrated. Maybe a few faces, but mostly animals at that time. But they trusted me and they gave me a try, and that's my first picture book.
That's great. I mean, this is just let me just give a side pitch for independent publishing as places that can really develop new and emerging artists and authors and take chances on new people who fit the characteristics that they're looking for, but who, haven't done a book yet. It's going to take more. It may or may not take more work, but it's a different kind of investment. So yeah, I just want to shout out that. Yeah, and Crown, you have so much experience. If you want to be willing to talk about hybrid publishing and the business model a little bit.
Yeah. So I want to preference before I get into this, I'm a control freak. So I almost sold. I need to stop saying sold because they would have it. I almost sold my first children's book, which is Black Boy, Black Boy. But I backed out at the last minute. And I went through the curing. I got an editor. After this whole thing, I fired my editor and I was like, I was turned off to traditional publishing. Um, I say if you're gonna go into these meetings, ask questions. I'm a control freak, so I ask questions. And I ask questions along the lines of the illustrations. To preference my book, each page is a different character, a different representation of a Black boy, and that was very important to me. So when I went into the meeting to like sign the contract and everything to sell the book to them, I asked about the illustrations, like what do they want changed? Because they already know what they want, how they want the book to go. And it might not always be how you saw the book going. They might make changes, and once you sell it, sometimes you don't have that control to stop the ball rolling. And I was fortunate enough to get this type of information from an author friend who had gone the traditional route. So I knew kind of to ask these questions, but I asked about my illustrations and they told me they were going to be changing the cover boy and then they wanted to make it one boy throughout the book. And that was just not what I wanted for my story. So I, having the dream of being an author, walked away from the table and this publishing deal and my agent. And then luckily enough, I found somebody who introduced me to hybrid publishing. Hybrid publishing is kind of like a middle between traditional publishing and self-publishing where you do it all by yourself, or traditional where you sell it and a publishing company does it for you. Hybrid publishing, the one that I promote, because there's different levels of hybrid publishing, but the one that I promote and I love doing and I do for my children's book and the company that I work for, it is that go between. So you hire this company, this publishing company, to guide you through the process, and at the end of the process you will have a traditional looking book. Most people don't know my books are hybrid until I tell them. My books look traditional. Like they have everything that a traditional book has: in pages, a copyright page, barcode with the ISBN, all the whole nine. It has everything, but they guide you through the process. You pay for that guidance and you pay for every stage. But at the end of it, you own all rights, not just the copyrights. You own all rights. You have all say. At least the companies that I work for, they don't, after your book is done, they don't have any, it's your book. You have fun, go out, be great, but we don't have anything. Like, we're, yes, your publisher, and if you need anything from us, file wise, come back to us. But we have no say in what you do with this book. You could burn it at the stake in a week after you publish it. That's your choice. And so that's what you get with hybrid publishing. Also, hybrid publishing, you get 100% of the profits. You have to manage all of that, and it can be stressful, but you get 100% of the profits. One of the things I truly love about hybrid versus traditional, because am curing now to go traditional again, to do it all. I've done work for hire. I do it with Learner Publishing here. So I have like 6 books with them for work for hire. I have 2 children's book hybrid, and then I have a comic book series that have 3 issues completely self-published. So I've done it all. I'm about to step my foot back into traditional. I feel like I have a little bit more umption behind me to be able to really go in and ask for what I want and then get it. I can show that I know what I'm doing. I have the sell power, things like that. When it comes to traditional. But one of the things I do say is, like, I always tell, especially diverse authors, if you're having trouble with going the traditional route, or you're getting rejections after rejection, because a lot of them don't see your books as marketable in traditional world, a book, they have to see the markability in this book. If they can't, and you haven't proven to them the markability in a book, you're not going to get picked up. And sometimes that can be hard for diverse authors. So I always say, look into hybrid publishing. If you're in Minneapolis, Beaver Pond Press in St. Paul, they publish my 2 books. They're great. They have the same model where you own all the rights. They don't take any profit at the end. And then Wising Media also. They're a great way to also learn the process. I got into publishing after going through the hybrid publishing model and learning about it and being like, I love this. I want to know more. I want to learn more. And that's how I ended up in publishing, is going through that model. But it definitely teaches you the ins and outs of the publishing world. And I think as diverse authors, that's very important, especially when you're stepping your foot into the traditional world, when you're working with agents that don't look like you, editors that don't look like you, and just a publishing team that may not look like you. It's good to know what you don't know. And there's a lot in publishing you don't know until it's like presented to you. And going through the traditional model, they do a lot of things without like telling you, versus hybrid, you as the author, you have final say in everything. We don't move forward in a process until you've approved everything. Is this why you like it? And we give you guidance. We're like, this is what you should do and how you should do it. But yes, that's how I entered into the publishing world, and I'm reluctantly going back into traditional, but I think all authors should adopt um like doing all the avenues, learning all the avenues to publishing and doing all the avenues to publishing. I'm getting back into traditional publishing because there are stories that I don't need to have a tight grip on. I don't need to have creative control over. So those can go to the like traditional publishing house. Ones that I need to have a tight control over, maybe I do hybrid or self-publishing. I think as authors, we think traditional is the only route to success. I am technically not traditional, and I would count myself as successful. 10 books in 5 years. I'm sitting on a panel with some of the best authors in Minnesota. I'm in spaces with some of the best authors in Minnesota, and I've never, published traditionally in that sense. So don't think, especially as diverse authors, don't get trapped in that I can only go traditional. There's other ways for you to put out your stories, your books, and things like that. I don't recommend self-publish to start. Learn the business, learn what the difference between what a good book looks like and a janky book looks like, because your books will be judged and that will hinder your distribution of them. But know that there are other avenues to getting your stories out there. You don't just have to go traditional to be successful. And like I keep saying, I'm reluctantly going traditional, but if they're not talking the way that I want to hear them talk, I'm going to go back to what I know, because I know it. I've been doing it for 5 years, and I don't want to toot my own horn, but toot toot, so that's my 2 cents.
That's great. That's great. That's so great. That's super helpful, Crown. Thank you. All right, we are at the Q&A portion of the evening. I'm so excited to see your questions. So yeah, throw your questions in the chat or emerge out of the darkness and just start talking. If that is better, let's see if I can see everyone. Okay, yeah, so I can see everyone on page 1 anyway, or you could raise the little hand at the bottom. No question is too small, mysterious. Okay, let's see. Here's a question. All right, panelists. Hi, so we've talked about writing as a career, but I'm not in that boat. I have stories that I want to share, but not pursue storytelling as my main career. Also, how is that relationship with illustrators? The images will be key to convey the message and the tone. Is it realistic for a new author to have say over the illustration? Thank you again for all your wisdom you've shared. Who would like to talk about that?
I can start, and I bring a kind of a, I wouldn't say unique perspective, maybe a different perspective, because I'm married to an artist, an illustrator, and we don't get along at all. No, I'm just kidding. The relationship with the illustrator, what I try to do as a writer, is I write the story that I want to write, and if I have specific things that I want to see reflected in the illustration, I'll make that note. But I really want to trust the artist as an artist, and let that artist also be an integral part of the storytelling, because I don't think I have the burden on the story, and it might be the start that started it, but I mean, the story takes on the lives of all the artists who touch it. And so I really like to give the artist the space that they need. And, the first part of the question, talking about not pursuing writing as a known career, I think most of us here have day jobs. I was talking about my day job as my health insurance job. As an artist, I just have to find other ways to bring money in as well. We're not all, James Patterson and Danielle Steele here. We all have, I think most of us have day jobs. So it's not something you have to pursue as your only source of income, because it's something you do as a really this side gig, and I do. There's job or life is in life that I want. It's the rest of your source of income.
Thank you, Art. There's a question in the chat. Do you have experience creating bilingual books? I can answer that. Maybe Art, you can too. But my first picture book is bilingual in English and Korean, and it's with Lee and Low Books in Chicago, which does only it's a multicultural press. But yeah, anyone else want to talk about bilingual or just using multiple languages in your text? Any?
I actually have a trilingual book I'm pretty proud of. Looks I'm on recently, it was written in English, and there are Cherokee words throughout. And then it was translated into Spanish as well. So just Spanish language edition that has all 3 languages. And then my tribe actually paid to translate the book into Cherokee language, entirely into Cherokee language. And we use it in an American school, which is homework to preparing other kids about math concepts and to what the book is about. So yeah, we don't have to find the in at least in personal publicly, I don't have to find the translator myself, and it depends on how the rights have been sold. When my agent negotiates the rights, whether we're selling, the foreign rights sometimes come later. Sometimes I think often in North America, the books are some North American rights, and I also have Spanish rights that are kind of built in those North American rights. So it's I'm not sure what the person's question was about working this bilingual book, but that's been my experience.
Thank you. Fancy, what's your question?
Hello, good evening, everyone. I had a question in regards to illustrations. Hold on, I wrote my question down. Let me go back to it. Okay, so I'm actually in the middle of um, finishing up my manuscript. I believe I'm kind of at my final stage here, and I have been doing mock-ups for my illustration pages. But before I kind of go too far, I just want to know, when is an author ready to begin illustrations? And is there any like key materials or prep work um, that is helpful? And more importantly, um, as an illustrator, do illustrators prefer when there's a fully written manuscript with mock-ups and sketches? Is that helpful?
I feel like that question's for me. Well, that's awesome. Congrats. That's really amazing.
Thank you.
I have a couple different answers. I do know an author that wrote a manuscript and she was really hands-on with the process and had sketches. So she went to an illustrator, found an illustrator, and worked with the illustrator and was very hands-on with feedback. Almost she became the art director. That's one way. I think she published the book herself, though, so she didn't work with a publisher. When you work with a publisher, I didn't even meet the author until the book was done. I only saw the manuscript that was from the editor. I loved the manuscript. I said, it's a go. I can see it. I can visualize it. And then the editor said, all right, it's a go. Start your sketching. I want to see the sketches by this deadline. It was like months and months ahead. We have really long deadlines with picture books. So I was really confident about that. Started sketching everything from the cover all the way to the back pages. And I got to stay in my lane. That's my expertise. It's my profession. I'm a professional freelance illustrator for 16 years. I personally would love to, I take the reins and I like to stay in my lane, and I like others to stay in their lane and shine where they're the shiniest, right? But I think nothing, like I said, all roads lead to one destination. You just kind of have to find your illustrator that will work that way with you. I hope that's helpful.
For
Yeah, I
sure.
think.
Yeah, it was helpful.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess just kind of a follow-up to
Sure.
that then is because I'm a digital creator too, so I do like digital artwork. So it's hard to not want to just start creating something visually. But
Yeah.
what I'm looking for is not actually necessarily what I'm creating. I'm just wondering if having mock-ups is actually helpful, or if it takes away from the creative process for someone who wants to dive in maybe just fresh.
It just depends on the artist, I would say.
Okay.
Um, Again, you have to just, yeah, with client work for hire work, I get presented mood boards. Sometimes they want me to make a mood board. It's very, fluid. You guys just have to have a very long, honest conversation of like what you have, what assets you have, what sketches you have. This is the direction, the vision you have. Can this illustrator execute that for you? Would they be happy to do it that way? It's just like going into the doctor's office and you have something you want, fixed, and you're going to write down everything that's going on, and then you're going to look at it and kind of diagnose it. And then what is the outcome that you want? What is the thing that you want out of this whole thing? And can that illustrator get you there? So you're happy on both ends. So, does that help?
Perfect. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
And it's the publisher's job to search out illustrators and then bring you, maybe they might bring you 5 to 8 illustrators, like portfolios.
Mm-hmm.
Say, okay, which of these 3 do you want me to pitch for your book?
Mm-hmm.
And then they will go pitch to those authors. And this is all mediated through the art director at the publisher. It's their job to take care of all of the art for that press, and that is their expertise to know what works for picture books, which are a very specific form. So most, when you submit a text manuscript for a picture book, you do not need to say anything about the pictures. You do not need to give any stage directions. It's generally better if you don't, because it's like screenwriting and then there's the filmmaker. So it is a collaboration, but again, it depends on your vision, your why, what you want, how much control you want, whether you want to work with other artists. I love collaborating, but not everyone does, so it just depends on what you want. And then, like Crown said, like ask all questions before you sign a contract, right? Like read a contract, really know that you understand what you're getting yourself into, whether it's a traditional publisher, hybrid, self-publishing, because the business, you have to like put on your business pants for that part so that you don't get taken advantage of and so that you know what you're getting into. Yeah.
There
There's
was one. Oh, go
go
ahead.
ahead. I was going to say there's one more question that's a little bit different that I thought would be good, which is, would you mind sharing any tips or wisdom about pitching your work? It's always a nerve-wracking process for this questioner, and then we'll turn it over to Carolyn after that. But yeah, pitching, thoughts on that?
Know your story. That's the best thing I will have to say to help with the nerves is like know your story. I think I put in the chat earlier, your why is very important. Your why is why you wrote the story. It's that should be, for me, my why is always my pitch. You know what I mean? Is a big part of, not my own, but a big part of my pitch is my why. And things like that. I'd say it depends on what type of pitching you're doing. Like if you're doing conference pitching, I always say rehearse it in the mirror, be passionate. You know what I mean? Like if you're passionate in that moment when you're having that one-on-one personable sort of pitching, be passionate. And then I'd say if you're doing like curing and stuff like that, where you're pitching through, a PDF file of a document, I'd say your marketability is going to be very as important as your why. Show that it's a marketable book, is what I always find success in when I pitch and things like that. I just need to start signing contracts. I don't be signing those things. But I'd say those are like what I would say is when you're pitching, know how to write a book proposal, especially when you're curing. If you don't know how to write a book proposal, or you're like, oh, you have to give a book proposal, I just sent an email, stop. Go find some classes where they teach book proposal writing, because that's a big part of curing, is knowing how to put together a good proposal. And those things could be like 20 pages long. Like they're long things that you have to create. And I would say your why within that pitch, and then your marketability, because you have to show that in a book proposal, is like, for me, are the things I focus on the most. Like, and the writing, you have to give like samples of what you're gonna, the book and stuff. Those would be my top 3 things.
That's great. Yeah. Any, like one more person? Any thoughts from the panel?
Well, I mean, just kind of building on what Crown said about knowing your story. I know if you're querying agents, so you're looking for an agent, um, you know, boiling your story down to its essence is tough. I mean, my novel, my children's novel is 50,000 words. I need to boil that down to a paragraph. The key things are to know, like, what is your main character want? What's standing in her way? And then, how are you going to resolve that? And when you're making a pitch too, don't hold out spoilers. You want to tell the story. You want to get to the surprise ending. You want to put the twist in or whatever. And don't get bogged down with side characters and side quests and that sort of thing. Just what is the essence of your story? Where are we headed with it? And that's the important part. The story is the important part, and being able to say it. It gets back to what people talk about your elevator report. What's your story in 1 or 2 sentences, and that's really important to hook the agent or to hook the publisher.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you, panelists, so much. This was a really wonderful conversation. And I am going to turn it back to Carolyn.
And I am going to ditto what Sun Young just said. Thank you, panelists, for a very stimulating and wide-ranging conversation. Everyone in the audience, please remember to fill out this survey that was in the chat so we can continue to know how we're doing. And yeah, if you have half a second left, Sun Young, if you could just tell people what they would gain from a consultation at Springboard with you.
Oh, yeah. So for Minnesotans, you can sign up with a number of artists who will do consultations on artist career next steps. So we don't review manuscripts or things like that, but you can go to that page and you see all the different consultants and what we can help different people with. And if you're in Minnesota, you can get usually 2 free or very low cost 1-hour Zooms. Some people might meet with people in person. And then you come and you fill out a form with your questions. What are you thinking about? Where are you with your artistic career? What do you need help with? Is it a grant application? Is it building community? Is it submitting something? Is it creative process? And then the Springboard will manage that process and get back to you. And then you can meet with me or someone else who's available. And yeah, get some help. It's really a great service.
Thank you. And thank you, panelists, Art, Christina, Crown, Amico. Thank all of you for being here tonight and sharing this wise information.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, and everyone's left your websites and how to get a hold of you in the chat as well, right? So hopefully some people will follow up with a message for you. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you. This
Yes,
was
thank you.
amazing.
Good luck.
Fill out
Happy
the survey.
Thank you, everyone.
Jason, did you have some final words?
Not really. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Please take the survey. If you'd like to save the chat with all the things we've been posting in there, don't forget you can usually save the chat. There's a little 3-dot menu on most versions of Zoom in the chat box that let you save it, so you can get all the links and everything just saved for later. Thank you to a great presentation by all of you great panelists. Yeah.
Thank you.